Hi, friends. I am here today to tell you the number one mistake that almost everyone we knows make when they guest blog. I'm guessing maybe you have some ideas, but I bet it's not what I'm going to share with you because it's something that I only learned over years and years and years of guest blogging. If you know much about me, first of all, I'm Christy Dash, president and publicist at Guide My Brand. But if you know much about me, you know that I have been a contributor, a guest blogger for Forbes for a long time. 3 years this time around, but I was also previously with them an additional 2 years from 2009 to 2011. I was able to go from that to working full time for ESPN because they noticed me writing for Forbes. I'm also a contributor with Entrepreneur, and I've written things for Glamour, Men's Health, Women's Day, Parents, you name it. I could rattle off dozens of publications. So tell you all that just to tell you I know guest blogging, and we place our clients constantly at places like Forbes and Entrepreneur, Working Mother, Shape. We've had clients all over the place. So the one thing I've learned makes the biggest difference in my guest blogging and how many people actually read my piece and how many people then reach out to me and want to work with me in some way. If you saw my live last week, I talked about I've gotten book deals from my guest blogging. I've gotten television segments. I've gotten paid speaking, paid consulting. So done correctly, guest blogging can be huge for you. And what you probably hear me talk about most often is how guest blogging is this huge credibility builder for you. And that's why so many of us do it, is to establish ourselves as that expert in our niche. If you're here live and you've been guest blogging, drop me a yes in the comments. If you haven't, drop me a no so that I know we've got some beginners and we need to talk through that a little bit more. But here's what I've noticed is that because we go into guest blogging thinking about what we want to do for ourselves, how we want to establish ourselves as an expert, how we want all the credibility for writing that piece, we tend to be pretty selfish in our pieces. We think that they have to be all about us, or at least all about our knowledge. And my clients are always very hesitant to include what we call other voices in the story. So when I'm writing for an editor at a publication, they might come back to me sometimes as a journalist, not so much as a guest blogger, but as a journalist, and say, we need another voice or two to flesh this story out. Now, you don't get a lot of that kind of direction as a guest blogger from editors, but I'm telling you that the same principles apply. You want to have other voices in the story when you can. So that's quoting other people. And I think the fear people have is that by quoting other people, you are admitting you didn't know something, or you are showing you had to rely on someone else's knowledge, that maybe it's not going to position you as that expert because you had to talk about or quote someone else. That's not what happens at all. I promise you, okay? The benefit to adding these other voices to the story is you can cherry pick people to quote and to feature in your story who have bigger audiences than you do. Or maybe they just have an audience you want to reach. So let me give you an example. I wrote a piece for Entrepreneur pretty early on when I started writing for them. And this has been like in the last year, because previous to that, I was writing for Fast Company. And I was thinking, how do I get the most eyeballs on this piece? I have this important message I want to share, and I want to position myself as this thought leader, as this expert in personal branding, okay? But that doesn't mean that every piece of advice in the article has to be from me in order to position me as that expert. I know this because I've learned it over the years writing for these outlets. So I thought about people I look up to who have these big personal brands who might be willing to be interviewed for my story. And the benefit of that is I'm now getting voices, other people into the story who people recognize. Because what if they don't recognize me? They don't know me, okay? I am positioning myself intentionally next to people they do recognize, okay? A little bit of that gonna rub off on me. You've probably heard people talk about how exciting it is that they're speaking on the stage with Tony Robbins, or they're speaking on the same stage as Marie Forleo or whoever it is. You know, you get a little bit of that like credibility that rubs off on you because of who you're associating with and the type of person you've been asked to be on a stage with. It's the same when you're writing a blog. When you include these other people in your story, you're positioning yourself next to them, okay? You are not taking away from what you know and from establishing yourself as that expert, okay? You are positioning yourself with them. So for this piece that I wrote for Entrepreneur on personal branding, I decided two of the brands I looked up to, who are very different, by the way, were Gabby Bernstein and Reality Steve. Now, if you're not a reality television junkie like I am, you might not know who Reality Steve is. Drop me a comment in the box here and give me a yes if you know who Reality Steve is, or a no if you don't. But I love Reality Steve and his information about The Bachelor and The Bachelorette so that I know what's going to happen before it happens. It's funny because I'm not the type to like flip to the end of a book to know the end of the book before I get there, but I do like knowing the outcome of Bachelor and Bachelorette. Diane says, Reality Steve? 4 question marks. So Diane does not know Reality Steve. Reality Steve is known for having inside information on the TV shows The Bachelor and The Bachelorette and giving out spoilers in advance and telling about the contestants and about who's ultimately going to win. And I think he's been right every season but one about who the winner was going to be. So he has a big brand within that space. So I had these 2 brands that I thought as a brand, as a personal brand, were very impressive, Gabby Bernstein and Reality Steve. And so I reached out to them and asked if I could interview them for my piece for Entrepreneur. They were both more than willing to do so. And so I was able to talk to them about how they built their personal brand and whether it was intentional or did it just happen, and what were some of their tips and advice for people about building their personal brand. Diane said, now I get it. And here's the thing, it didn't take away from me trying to establish myself as an expert on personal branding just because I talked to them and got their advice and mentioned them. In fact, it helped me because it got more eyeballs on my guest blog because they shared it with their audience, okay? That's one of the huge benefits of including someone else in your story, particularly someone who either has a bigger audience or who has maybe just a different audience from you, a new audience that you're trying to reach. By including them, hopefully, they will share what you've written and you'll be able to tap into their audience. And then as you start to get more views on your piece, the outlet you wrote for might decide to feature it on the front page, or maybe you've got someone so big in their piece, in your piece, that they decide to feature it on the front page to begin with. So there are all these benefits to having these bigger names and having these other voices in your piece because it gives you access to their audience, but also, like I was mentioning before, it positions you alongside that person, okay? It starts when you're being named amongst these other people who are already recognized, that increases your brand value. And when people write guest blogs, my clients included, they tend to be so focused on giving their advice, plugging their book, plugging their website, plugging their upcoming course or program. You know, it's a very selfish endeavor. And I look, it's why I guest blog too, because it's a great credibility builder. And yes, it is absolutely a way to establish yourself as that expert in your niche, but you don't have to be the only person in the blog. It's a great excuse to reach out to people and be able to access people you would never otherwise be able to access. So someone who, let's say, Gabby Bernstein, what are the odds she and I are going to hang out at this point in time? But I interviewed her PR people and asked if I could interview for her this piece. I got to talk to Gabby Bernstein. Same thing with Reality Steve. It allows you to get access to these people who you might otherwise never get to talk to. So you're getting to talk to them. You're adding to your own credibility by writing about them and by being, mentioned beside them and by being part of the same article that they're part of. You're hopefully getting access to their audience because they're going to share your piece on social media or in their newsletter, what have you. There are all these benefits to putting other people in your blog, and my clients are always so skeptical about it. If you're somebody who's listening to this right now and you're skeptical about it and you feel like you're uncomfortable putting someone else in your story, whether that's because you're uncomfortable reaching out to them or because you are uncomfortable with it not being 100% focused on you, drop me a comment and let's talk it out a little bit, because I'm telling you, there are far more benefits than there are disadvantages to including. Now, are you going to put your, are you going to include your direct competitor? Okay, probably not, all right? There might be instances actually where that makes sense, but probably not. But you want to include other, whether you want to call them thought leaders or influencers or whatever you want to label them and call them. By including these other people, you are taking full advantage of that guest blocking opportunity. You are sucking out everything you can get out of writing a guest blog. You're getting access to these people you would never have access to. You're upping your credibility, your piece is getting shared with more people, so it's getting more traffic, and that's more people who can learn about you and end up clicking on your links or reaching out to you because they want to work with you. I'm telling you that it makes your piece better, and it makes your reach infinitely better. So I highly encourage you, if you're already out there guest blogging, to start thinking about how you can include other voices, other people in your guest blogs, and use that to help you skyrocket the potential of your guest blog and how it's positioning you. All right, if you guys have got any questions, drop those for me in the comments and I'll be happy to get to them. If you're watching this on the replay and you have questions, you can drop those and I will for sure come back and answer them later. This is a topic I love talking about because I've been guest blogging for so long and it's done so much for my career. So I hope that you all embrace it and that it does so much for you too. All right, I don't see any questions, so I'm gonna go. You guys, if you came in the middle and you wanna watch it from the beginning, now when I post it, you'll be able to go back. And if you've got questions, leave them and I will come back to them later. Hope everybody has a great rest of the day.